September 7, 1940. 9:18 p.m. London. The air raid sirens begin their wail, just as the last light drains from the sky. You can almost feel the city tense, millions of people pausing mid-step, mid-breath. The sound cuts through London like a blade. Shop lights snap off. Street lamps go dark. Curtains are drawn tight. Within seconds, the largest city in the British Empire disappears into shadow. High above the Thames, the first German bombers cross the coast. Their engines are distant at first, low, rolling thunder over the channel. Then louder, heavier, closer. Somewhere in Whitehall, deep underground, men in pressed uniforms and tired eyes listen to the same sound and understand what it means. This is not just another raid. This is the beginning of something Britain has feared for months. Inside the Cabinet War Rooms, Prime Minister Winston Churchill stands over a long map table. Red pins mark airfields. Blue lines trace railways. Black circles surround cities: London, Birmingham, Liverpool, Manchester. Each circle represents industry, ports, power, life. Churchill removes his cigar. Smoke hangs in the cramped room. The question no one wants to ask finally lands in the silence. What if the Germans land? By the summer of 1940, France is gone. The Netherlands have fallen. Belgium has collapsed. The British Army has barely escaped Dunkirk, leaving behind tanks, artillery, and equipment by the thousands. Across the Channel, Hitler's invasion force waits, Operation Sea Lion. Britain stands alone. And if the German army steps onto British soil, the government knows one thing with absolute certainty. They cannot allow Britain to be captured intact. Not its ports, not its factories, not its fuel depots, not its railways. So behind locked doors, Britain prepares a plan so extreme it will not be written into public history books for decades. A plan not to save its cities, but to destroy them. In a secure office at the Ministry of Home Security, civil servants, engineers, and military planners work late into the night. Their papers are stamped most secret. Some documents never leave the room. Others are burned once memorized. The plan is simple in concept and horrifying in execution. If German forces cross the beaches and break inland, Britain will deny them everything. Bridges will be blown, not just key crossings, but entire networks, collapsing rivers into impassable barriers. Power stations will be sabotaged from the inside, plunging cities into permanent darkness. Fuel tanks at ports will be ignited, turning harbors into firestorms visible for miles. Factories will be rigged with explosives, machines smashed beyond repair. Even streets are marked. Not metaphorically, literally. Surveyors quietly measure intersections. Engineers identify which buildings, when collapsed, will choke roads completely. Explosives are cached in basements, warehouses, under viaducts. Civil defense units receive sealed orders they are forbidden to open unless invasion is confirmed. These are not battlefield demolitions. These are self-inflicted wounds, planned in cold detail. And the most chilling part: most of the people living above these explosives will never know they are there. Across Britain, the preparations extend beyond the cities. Along the countryside, units of the Home Guard, many of them too old or too young for frontline service, are trained not just to fight, but to destroy. They are issued instructions for sabotaging water supplies, burning crops, poisoning fuel, and rendering entire regions useless to an occupying army. This is called the scorched earth option. Churchill never uses that phrase publicly. Privately, he understands exactly what it means. Britain is preparing to burn itself alive if that is the price of survival. In some cases, the orders are brutally specific. Ports like Liverpool, Hull, and Bristol, critical lifelines for food and American supplies, are pre-selected for partial annihilation. If captured, they must be unusable for months, even years. Cranes are wired, dock gates prepared for collapse, channels mapped for obstruction. The goal is not resistance. The goal is denial. Inside a quiet building in Westminster, a senior official writes in his notes that the policy will cause unavoidable suffering among the civilian population. He pauses, then writes something else beneath it. But occupation would be worse. Above ground, London burns anyway. The Blitz has begun. Fires rage unchecked. Firefighters battle infernos with dwindling water pressure as mains are shattered by bombs. Families huddle in underground stations, the floor vibrating with each detonation. Children cry. Dust fills the air. Somewhere, a church collapses in on itself with a sound like the earth breaking. And yet this destruction, as terrible as it is still not the worst-case scenario. The worst case is still waiting. Because even as German bombs fall from the sky, Britain's leaders are preparing for something far darker. The moment they might have to give the order to finish the destruction themselves. And if that order comes, there will be no speeches, no warnings, no time. Only fire, silence, and cities erased by their own defenders. The message is short, no signature, no explanation. Just 3 words, typed and retyped across multiple carbon copies. Execute denial measures. If that phrase ever leaves Whitehall, Britain's fate changes in an instant. The orders are not sent through normal channels. There will be no radio transmission that German intelligence could intercept. Instead, sealed envelopes sit inside locked safes across the country, in police stations, rail offices, port authorities, power plants. Men are chosen not for rank but for reliability. Many don't even know what they're guarding. Until the day comes. In Kent and Sussex, where German troops are expected to land first, Royal Engineers quietly survey roads and bridges under the pretense of routine maintenance. They note load-bearing points. They test concrete. They calculate how much explosive it will take to turn a highway into a crater field. You can almost see it happening, columns of German armor rolling inland, only to find roads folded in on themselves, bridges dropped into rivers, rail lines twisted like broken wire. But the plan goes further than infrastructure. Much further. At ports along the south coast, fuel depots are fitted with ignition systems designed to work even if staff flee. A single pull of a lever will turn millions of gallons of petrol into an uncontrollable inferno. Dockyards, Britain's arteries, will become lakes of flame. In the industrial heartlands, factory managers are quietly instructed on how to destroy their own machines. Precision tools are to be smashed, not bombed, rendered useless beyond repair. Turbines are to be warped, molds shattered, production lines dismantled in minutes. This is not chaos. It is calculated ruin. And then there are the cities themselves. Urban planners working under the cover of civil defense identify which buildings can be sacrificed to choke entire neighborhoods. A collapsed warehouse here, a dropped viaduct there. Fires allowed to spread unchecked, not as accidents but as strategy. London, if taken, will not be governed. It will be starved. Food depots are marked, cold storage facilities selected for destruction. Even sewage pumping stations are placed on the list. Occupying forces, Britain believes, will not just face resistance, they will face disease, hunger, and logistical collapse. Yet perhaps the most disturbing element of the plan lies with the civilians. Britain does not intend to evacuate everyone. There is no way to. Instead, the government prepares to leave millions in place, knowing full well what the destruction will mean. The assumption is brutal but clear. Short-term suffering is preferable to long-term occupation. Inside classified memos, officials debate how much destruction is too much. One line appears again and again. The population must survive, but the country must not function. And then there is the Home Guard. often portrayed later as a symbol of quiet patriotism. In 1940, they are something else entirely. These men are trained not only to fight, but to vanish into the countryside after sabotage. They receive instructions on ambush, demolition, and assassination. Some are issued knives instead of rifles. Their role is simple. If Britain falls, the war does not end. It sinks into the shadows. Secret units, later known as auxiliary units, are formed for a purpose that is never written down plainly. They are trained to operate behind enemy lines after invasion, living in underground hideouts, emerging only at night to destroy supply lines, kill officers, and sabotage communications. Their life expectancy is estimated at 2 weeks. They are told this up front, and they accept it. The denial plan and the shadow war are inseparable. Britain is not just preparing to lose territory, it is preparing to make that territory uninhabitable to its enemy. In September 1940, Churchill addresses the nation, his words broadcast across crackling radios. "We shall fight on the beaches, we shall never surrender." The public hears defiance. Behind the scenes, the government is planning obliteration. As Luftwaffe raids intensify, invasion scares ripple through the country. False alarms send troops racing to the coast. Orders are drafted and redrafted. The phrase "execute denial measures" is placed closer to readiness. Closer, and closer still. Because if German boots touch British sand, there will be no hesitation. Cities will burn not from enemy bombs, but from British hands. And once that first bridge falls, there will be no turning back. October 1940. Southern England. 03:42 a.m. The telephone rings once, then stops. In a small, windowless room beneath a municipal building, a man in a dark coat exhales slowly. He does not answer the phone. He already knows what the call would mean. Across Britain, thousands of similar rooms exist, quiet, unmarked, unacknowledged. Inside them are maps with red grease pencil marks, ledgers, keys, and in some cases explosives stacked neatly under tarpaulin. This is the physical reality of the denial plan. Not theory, not contingency. Hardware. In London, engineers from the Metropolitan Water Board quietly install fail-safes deep within pumping stations. Valves can be locked open or shut permanently. Reservoirs can be drained. Mains can be flooded with debris. Water, life itself, can be removed from entire districts with a few turns of a wheel. The Thames, Britain's most famous artery, is also part of the plan. Key docks are prepared to be scuttled. Barges loaded with stone are positioned so they can be sunk in shipping lanes, blocking access for months. At night, lorries without markings move through industrial zones. Their drivers do not wear insignia. They unload crates into basements, under bridges, inside warehouses already damaged by the Blitz. The explosions that may one day follow will look like the work of German bombs. That is intentional. Britain wants the enemy to think the destruction is chaotic. It is anything but. Factories in Birmingham and Coventry, already targets of devastating raids, are assessed not for defense but for maximum self-destruction. The goal is to leave nothing usable behind. Machine tools are the priority. Without them, production cannot resume. Without production, occupation becomes a drain instead of a prize. In ports, naval officers walk dockyards with civilian engineers, speaking in code. They discuss maintenance issues and structural weaknesses, but what they are really planning is how to collapse entire sections of harbor walls into the sea. Liverpool, Britain's Atlantic lifeline, is marked in thick pencil. So is Glasgow. So is London's East End. And then there are the railways. Britain's rail network is its circulatory system. Trains move coal, food, troops, weapons. So planners decide it must be broken in a way that cannot be quickly repaired. Switchyards are identified as prime targets. Signaling equipment is to be smashed. Tunnels collapsed. Key locomotives destroyed in place. Not blown up. Crippled. Repairable damage is not enough. As these preparations continue, a darker question emerges inside Whitehall. How much destruction will turn the population against us? Officials understand the risk. If the people realize their own government is prepared to destroy their cities, morale could collapse faster than any invasion. So secrecy becomes absolute. Even local officials are often told only what they need to know, and nothing more. Some refuse. A handful of engineers quietly ask to be reassigned. A port official in the Southwest writes a letter stating he cannot bring himself to ignite a fuel depot with civilians nearby. His letter disappears into a file. The plan does not change. Because Britain's leadership believes one thing more strongly than any moral hesitation. Occupation would mean the end of Britain as a fighting nation. If Germany captures intact cities, intact ports, intact factories, the war is effectively lost. Britain becomes a resource base for the Reich. So the cities must die. So the nation can live. Outside government circles, rumors begin to circulate. Dock workers notice unfamiliar wiring. Railwaymen see unusual inspections. Civil defense volunteers are given instructions that make little sense in the context of air raids alone. People talk quietly. What are they not telling us? But no one sees the full picture. Then in November 1940, something shifts. German invasion barges once massed along the French coast begin to disperse. Luftwaffe losses mount. Weather worsens. Operation Sea Lion is delayed, then postponed, then quietly shelved. The order to execute denial measures never comes. Not officially. Not fully. Yet the preparations remain. Explosives stay in place, plans stay written, sealed envelopes stay sealed. Because even as the immediate threat fades, Britain understands something else now. It crossed a line. It proved to itself that it was willing to destroy everything it owned rather than surrender it. And that realization will shape every decision that follows. Because if Britain could do this to its own cities, what else could it justify in the name of survival? The explosives are never removed. Not in 1940. Not in 1941. Not even when the invasion threat fades into the background of a longer, grinding war. Instead, the denial plan evolves. Quietly, what began as a last-ditch response to invasion becomes something more permanent, an invisible war running beneath the visible one. Across Britain, the auxiliary units complete their training. These are not regular soldiers. They wear no insignia. Their names do not appear on public rolls. Many are farmers, mechanics, shopkeepers, men who know their land intimately. They are trained at night. How to kill silently. How to move without leaving tracks. How to live underground for weeks without sunlight. Hidden across forests, fields, and hedgerows are purpose-built bunkers, small, sealed chambers disguised so well even locals walk past them daily. Inside, explosives, weapons, food, poison, maps. Their orders are explicit. If invasion happens, they are to allow German troops to pass, then rise behind them, destroy fuel convoys, sabotage headquarters, kill officers, spread fear. They are not expected to survive. At the same time, denial measures are refined with new intelligence. As Britain learns more about German logistics, it adjusts what must be destroyed first: fuel before food, rail before roads, communications before all else. One classified report states plainly, the objective is not resistance, it is paralysis. Civil servants and military planners now carry a burden they can never share. They attend air raid briefings by day and demolition meetings by night. They listen to reports of civilian deaths from bombing, knowing that, if ordered, they may cause far more. Churchill himself is briefed regularly. He never orders the plan canceled. He never orders it executed. It exists in a state of suspension, like a loaded weapon on the table. The Blitz ends in May 1941. Britain survives its darkest hour. And yet the country remains wired to self-destruct. Then slowly the tide turns. The Battle of the Atlantic begins to shift. American supplies increase. The Soviet Union enters the war. Britain moves from survival to resistance, and then, eventually, to offense. But the denial plan is not dismantled. Because war teaches a hard lesson, certainty is a luxury. Only in late 1942 do some measures begin to be quietly rolled back. Explosives are removed from a handful of locations. Others are simply forgotten, sealed in walls, buried under rubble, lost to time. Decades later, construction crews will still occasionally uncover unexploded charges in basements and tunnels, relics of a night that never came. The public never hears about most of it. After the war, Britain prefers stories of defiance and victory, of Spitfires and beaches, of standing alone and winning through courage. There is no place in that story for a government that prepared to burn its own cities. So the files are sealed. For years, for decades, and when they are finally opened, the revelation is unsettling. Britain did not survive World War II by faith alone. It survived because it was prepared to destroy itself. The cities still stand, the bridges still cross their rivers, the ports still face the sea. But beneath them lies a truth long buried. That in 1940, Britain came closer than anyone ever knew to pulling the trigger on itself. August 1945 is over. The war is won. Britain celebrates in the streets. Flags wave, bells ring, crowds flood Trafalgar Square. For the first time in 6 years, the future feels solid beneath people's feet. And yet deep inside government vaults, nothing moves. The files stay closed. Stamped top secret. Then most secret. Then simply forgotten. For decades, Britain tells its WWII story the way nations prefer to tell them, through courage, unity, and victory. Schoolchildren learn about the Blitz spirit. Films celebrate pilots and speeches. The idea that Britain was ever prepared to destroy itself does not fit the narrative. So it is buried. Not destroyed, just buried. In the 1960s and 70s, urban redevelopment begins across Britain. Bomb-damaged cities rebuild. Old factories are torn down. Underground tunnels are expanded. And then, occasionally, something strange happens. Construction crews break through walls that were never on blueprints. They uncover sealed rooms. They find wiring that leads nowhere. Sometimes they find explosives. Unmarked, unregistered, still lethal. Engineers call the authorities. Bomb disposal units arrive. Quiet reports are written. No press releases follow. These discoveries are treated as inconveniences, odd remnants of wartime chaos. But they are not chaos. They are evidence. In the late 1970s, historians begin filing requests under newly relaxed archival rules. Boxes come out of storage. Memos are read for the first time since 1940. And slowly, an uncomfortable picture emerges. This was not improvisation. This was policy. One declassified document lists hundreds of demolition sites across London alone. Another outlines fuel destruction priorities by port. A third describes how long it would take for an occupying force to restore basic services after denial measures were executed. The estimate is grim. Months at minimum. Years more likely. The files reveal something else too. something more human. Marginal notes, handwritten doubts, civil servants questioning whether civilians could survive the aftermath. One official writes that the policy may break the spirit of the nation even in victory. Another responds with a single line: better broken than enslaved. The auxiliary units remain the most shocking revelation. Their existence is denied publicly until the 1990s. When survivors finally speak, their stories are chilling. Men describe living underground during training, breathing recycled air, practicing silent kills on mannequins shaped like German officers. They knew the plan. They knew the cities might burn. They knew they were meant to die. And they accepted it without medals, without recognition, without certainty the war would even remember them. Historians debate the morality of Britain's denial plan to this day. Some argue it was a necessary deterrent, that knowing Britain would destroy its own infrastructure made invasion less attractive to Germany. Others argue it crossed a line, that governments exist to protect their people, not plan their suffering. But what cannot be debated is this: the plan was real. The explosives were placed. The orders were written. And for one long, terrifying stretch of 1940, Britain stood with its finger on the switch. History often asks what nations are willing to do to defeat their enemies. World War II forced Britain to answer a darker question. What are you willing to do to yourself to survive? In the end, the order never came. The bridges stayed standing. The ports stayed open. The cities endured. But survival did not come from certainty. It came from resolve so absolute that destruction, total, deliberate destruction, was considered acceptable. That is the secret Britain kept. Not that it stood alone, but that it was ready to burn everything it was, rather than let the enemy take it.